Do you like taxes? Parliament does. Parliament just passed the Stamp Act. Parliament says the taxes will pay for defending your land. But will they really? You see them marching in our streets, redcoats. Parliament calls the redcoats the King's champions. The Sons of Liberty calls them your jailers. And now we have the Stamp Act of 1765. Parliament says you'll have to pay taxes on public documents. Need a lawyer? Too bad. Parliament says you need to pay up. Want to get married? Not unless Parliament gets its money. Parliament says you can't vote for representation because of where you live. Parliament says its laws supersede our laws. The Sons of Liberty say, vote with your feet. Get out there and march.
Violence erupts in the streets of Boston. The Redcoats are out for your blood tonight. On Committee of Correspondence. Hello, I'm Dr. Joseph Warren, and here is your correspondence. Protesters against His Majesty's government spent all day marching for their rights when met by 9 regulars of the 26th Regiment of Foot. While expecting liberty and justice, our steadfast Englishmen received musket fire instead. The Redcoats fired volley after merciless volley into the crowd, taking the lives of 5 colonists and wounding many more. In this woodblock print by Paul Revere, you can see the glee in the soldiers' eyes as they hew down the innocent protesters. Governor Hutchinson of Massachusetts ordered the arrest of the soldiers for their crimes, and they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Our own John Adams expects to grant them a full legal defense, saying that all men deserve a fair trial. In the name of peace, the Redcoats have withdrawn to their ships offshore while the trial commences. Now all eyes turn to Boston. The colonists cried for their rights as Englishmen, and the Redcoats answered with bullets and blood. More when we return.
Say, Billy, you're looking kind of down in the dumps there, pal. Anything you want to talk about?
Golly gee, this mercantilism has really got me down, Pop. I want to try some of that French tea, or even some of that tea from the Dutch East Indies that Tommy's mom had the other day.
Tommy's mom and dad can afford to pay the import tax. Your old man works hard, and we're proud Bostonians. But I'm sorry to say, champ, we can only afford the Crown's own tea from the British East India Company.
How come, Pop?
Well, Bill, when you're older, you'll understand. The British Crown wants to control trade, so it imposes taxes and tariffs to ensure that all good Tory loyalists buy their tea from the King's merchants.
But I saw Sam and his dad enjoying some Dutch tea the other day, and he said they didn't pay the tariffs.
I know, son. But that's because Sam's dad is a dirty, rotten smuggler. Next time you see that happening, better go and tell the Royal Customs officers. They'll clamp the irons on Sam's dad in no time flat.
That's great, Pop.
You betcha, son. That way, we make sure that the king and his government get their just duties and revenues, so they can afford to provide us with protection in the way of soldiers and governance.
Thanks, Pop. God save the king.
Ha ha, that's my boy. And God save his government, too. Try new East India tea, just like the old tea, now with more mercantilism. Thursday, December 17th, 1773. It all goes down at Griffin's Wharf. Get your Mohawk costumes ready. The Sons of Liberty are throwing a tea party. Ow! 3 vessels loaded with 342 chests of hated East India Company tea. All must go overboard. How much damage can you do in just 3 hours' time? Parliament says you have to buy your tea from East India Company. Here's your chance to show Parliament and the trading company just what you think of British tea. And remember, no taxation without representation.
Good evening. I'm Lord North, Prime Minister of His Majesty's government, and this message is for the dreadful and tedious Whig rebels who have committed a most unlawful act in hurling 90,000 pounds of His Majesty's tea into the harbor of Boston last December. The Americans have tarred and feathered His Majesty's subjects, plundered merchants of the realm, denied obedience to His Majesty's laws and the authority of his government. We have tried to govern the colonies with leniency and goodwill, and this is the result. Well, no longer. On the morrow, Parliament will pass the following acts. Firstly, the Boston Port Act will close the port of Boston, the site of terrible derision of His Majesty's government, until the damages to the East India Trading Company can be recompensed. Secondly, the charter for the colony of Massachusetts is suspended, and we grant all necessary power to His Majesty's governor to restore order and tame the unruly tide of Yankee provincialism. Thirdly, the Administration of Justice Act will ensure that all officials in His Majesty's government will receive just trials in Great Britain rather than endure the mockery of justice in provincial courts. Next, the Quartering Act decrees that a royal governor now has the right to house soldiers of His Majesty's armed forces in unoccupied buildings if suitable quarters are not available. Finally, the Quebec Act expands the borders of the colony of Quebec and guarantees the free practice of the Roman Catholic faith for all good people of Quebec. In good measure, these acts are designed to isolate the radicals in the port of Boston and bring them and their silly Whig notions of independence to heel. In good faith, we set out to restore proper British authority in Massachusetts and reform order in the Crown's North American possessions.
Hello, Dr. Joseph Warren here, joining you today from the steps of Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where the delegates from 12 of the North American colonies are meeting to discuss political matters amid growing tensions between the colonies and His Majesty's government. The gentlemen delegates have been in session since September 5th, and I'm told that the meeting now known as the Continental Congress has achieved two major accomplishments. The first is a general boycott on all goods imported from Great Britain that will begin December 1st. The delegates believe this boycott will be successful in dropping British imports by as much as 97% over the next year. This measure is meant to ensure Parliament's cooperation in repealing what have become known as the Intolerable Acts. Passed earlier this year, the Intolerable Acts were an attempt by Parliament to limit patriot radicalism in the land known as New England. The delegates also determined that they would meet again next year, when they hope to welcome delegates from other North American colonies, including Quebec, West and East Florida, Georgia, and Nova Scotia, to further talks on fair representation and just taxation. Now all eyes turn to the 56 delegates with the hope of solid leadership in the coming months. Will the colonies pursue independence, or will they reconcile with the King's government and be welcomed back into the fold of empire? Of this, no one is absolutely sure, but it seems the majority of delegates, led by Patrick Henry, are in favor of separation. More to come in the near future, but for now, I'm Joseph Warren, doctor, a son of liberty, and a patriot.